Entering Corsi Nation.
This is Jerome Corsi, and we have a return guest with us. I'm very pleased to have with us Cregg Lund again. Cregg is the author here of Silicon Satan. Now, this is a book we published here at Post Hill Press. I'm a acquiring editor at Post Hill Press, and I consider this to be a very important book. It's a novel. And Cregg, thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, yeah, we're going to do much more on this. Now, the whole point of Silicon Satan is to expose the satanic nature of what goes on in Silicon Valley. And the book is shocking. It has very explicit parts to it. But the whole point in publishing it was that we can handle the truth and we need to know the truth. In other words, what we're seeing here now, the country reacting to the woke, which I think was nothing but neo-Marxism and, a redo of cultural Maoism. It resulted in anarchy. The country's rejected all of this bizarre transgenderism, and the country is, I think, rejecting the woke agenda in its entirety. But the country's not yet awakened to what P. Diddy and, all of this is about, with all the sex parties and what truly goes on among the elite in Hollywood, the elite in general. The Silicon Valley is a good demonstration of it. And Cregg, you were a firsthand witness in it. You were a programmer who was doing very well in Silicon Valley. You want to give us a couple of minutes about your background and what brought you to write this book?
Yeah, I was an up and coming engineer in Silicon Valley that's back when Silicon Valley first started. I mean, it was a new industry. When I first started, it was pretty pure and innocent. Just a bunch of nerds hanging around and building things. And then the business people came. It was about around the .com bubbles when things really started to change. And that's when I started getting invited to parties and seeing stuff that was going on. And at first I thought, well, this is just craziness. And then I realized, a lot of these bigwigs are doing it. A lot of the big guys are doing it. And then, before I knew it, I was kind of doing it. And I realized, okay, I got to get out of here, because if I stay on this path, I'm going to get very rich, but I'm going to get locked into something that I really don't want to be locked into. And it was difficult to get out. Actually, it was very difficult. I couldn't have got out by myself, but it took a lot of prayer and a lot of help from God to get me out of there. But here I am. And so I wrote the book. It was really hard to write it. There's two good things came out. One was it helped me to go back and relive and kind of refight these old battles and get them out of my system. And the other is that it's kind of the people who've read it, they're shocked at first, but then they have a lot of good questions about, okay, well, what about this over here? It's like, yeah, that too. That's part of it. And so people are waking up. I noticed that the elite, they're responding to being exposed, but they're not really running for cover. And that's worrisome.
Well, they will be running for cover, I think, after a while. But I think more is going to get exposed on Jeffrey Epstein. More is going to get exposed on P. Diddy. I think the whole corruption in this, the child sex trade, the pedophilia, we're just at the front edge of it being exposed. I mean, there's talking about the 500,000 children that Biden brought across the border and were really sex trafficked or were abandoned. So that's now beginning to be looked at. And I think we're going to find much more on that, even with the Catholic Church and, this Archbishop McCarrick. We have done many different podcasts on it. More will be coming out there too. But I want to first go to the website, a Corsi Nation website. And Chris, if you'll help us navigate through this. The Corsi Nation website now, if you scroll down, I'm featuring two authors, Mike McCormick, who has done this book he's done a lot of writing about Archbishop Vigano in Rome, and we're so very close to Archbishop Vigano. There's Mike McCormick, a younger picture of Mike McCormick. And Mike was he was a stenographer who was very close to Biden, official stenographer in the White House. and he experienced a lot of the corruption of the Biden family in Ukraine and also with the Vatican, making deals that involved pedophilia and drug trafficking that the Vatican and the Biden administration were involved in. And it's also very shocking. And then scroll down a little further, and you'll see the sections devoted to Silicon Satan and to Cregg. Now, Craig's actually writing a second novel, and it's being serialized on the website. So he's got here, Where's Wally, Part 2. And if you'll scroll down a little bit more, Chris, you can see here the animations, the drawings. Craig's ended up to being a very, very accomplished graphic artist. And so there's illustrations that go with this book that show you what the different scenes are. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, you want to see more about Craig's writing, there is an archive. So you can click down to the very bottom, go down to the very bottom, Chris, and see if you can get into the archive section there.
And by the way,
Yes.
I am working on the animations. I was working with a group from Poland, but they kind of bailed on me, so I got to figure that out. But we'll have animations out there soon that sort of play out some of these scenes.
I'm looking forward to that. And this is how much he's written in the new book. And so you can read the new book right on here. Of course, as it gets finished and we put it into print, we'll probably start removing it from the website. But you're going to get an advanced look at it. And I think it's going to be a very, very interesting book. I've yet to get into it as deeply as I want to. But I want to go back to Silicon Satan and feature kind of how what's in this book. And it's a fascinating story. When you start reading it, I think at first, like Cregg said, you're going to find it shocking. Some of the parts of it are truly shocking. And yet it's hard to put down because once your mind gets into what's going on and involves a lot of explicit sex, group sex, drugs, Satan worship, baby killing, and eating. I mean, it's tough to get your mind around what the satanic practices really are all about. But I want to feature a couple today. I want to feature one of the characters in it who's called Brenda, and tell the story here because the book involves a character who's really Cregg named Raj at a ranch in California, a horse ranch, when he's growing up and his experiences. And one of the experiences is with this older woman whose name is Brenda. Now we're going to contrast how Brenda works in the story. She's really kind of a contemporary woman, hippie, free love. And she innocently seduces this young Raj. And it gets compared to another character later on in the book who is Wade Parson, who is a Hollywood photographer from Malibu, seduces Sloane. Well, Sloane is the female counterpart to Raj in the book. Raj and Sloane meet and have sexual experiences when they're very young and end up getting married and participating in all the sexual extravagance that became Silicon Valley. And this is a fictionalized version, really, Cregg, of what you went through. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting because I'm glad I wrote the book when I did, because I've had a couple people accuse me of trying to copy stuff that's going on now. It's like, but I wrote the book a long time ago. I wrote it before all of this. So everything you're seeing now being played out in the news with P. Diddy and such, that's not by accident. That was really happening.
And how long have we been working on this together?
Well, 8 years or something.
8 years. I mean, we started this a long time ago.
Right. And when I first contacted you, I had all the stories with me. It's not like I've been developing them along, as we went. This is the way it happened in Silicon Valley and in Hollywood and in DC and other places. And now I'm starting to see it happening in the podcasting world, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming out and it's going to come out more, but you've actually written and thrown away this book a couple of times.
Yeah. It was a really hard project. I've been through some hard projects. This is the worst. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Go back and write this stuff.
Is writing a book.
Writing that book.
Yeah. Well, anybody who thinks writing is easy hasn't really tried it in a serious fashion. It's not easy.
Well, now that I'm going, the second book is I wouldn't call it easy either, but it's at least I know what I'm doing a little bit better.
Well, your writing is improving. I constantly, I think people are going to, I can see this being a series of books, and I think people will get into them and read them all. It may
There's enough
take
material.
it may take a while for you to build a big readership, but I think over time you're going to have a following, and people are going to be wanting to see. And when they get into one book, they're going to go back and read them all, which is what people typically do. So it may take you a while here to get established, but it will happen. It's just a matter of continuing to do it and continuing to persist. And
well, my main goal though isn't really to sell books. It's I want people to see what's really going on, because if you read something like this, it's going to be shocking, and you're gonna say, no way, that's not happening. But then you're going to start seeing it all over the place, and it'll help wake people up. You got to get through this first. The hardest part is getting your head wrapped around that this stuff is actually going on all over the place. We live in an evil kingdom. No matter, it doesn't matter how much wallpaper you can put up, it's still an evil kingdom.
Okay, so when we start encountering Brenda, and tell me about Brenda, because she had, Brenda was a girlfriend, but describe her and how, we say here that, he sees her still in bed, and she's been steadily studying the tall and lanky hippie cowboy as he gracefully moves around the small, incommodious, but comfortable Airstream travel trailer that's crammed full of his horse tack and leather products. So Louis is her boyfriend before Raj comes on. Is that right?
Yeah. So Brenda kind of represents a lot of different women of that time, where she was this free spirit. She wasn't evil. She didn't think she was. She was just everything was about free love, free. I mean, you were there during those years.
I didn't participate as much as you did, although we were all affected by it.
Well, it's interesting because the barn, the ranch, the horse business is 80% female, so it attracted a lot of females out there. And our horse ranch is big. We sold to Ronald Reagan and such. We trained Tennessee Walkers. The two most famous horses, Trigger and Hi-Ho Silver, are Tennessee Walkers.
Right, they're beautiful horses.
And the reason why people like them is because they're plantation, they're pleasure horses. They have a different gait. If you watch someone riding a Tennessee Walker, the rider doesn't bounce up and down. He just goes smooth. And they were bred so that you could run around your 10,000 acre plantation all day without getting a sore butt.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So women like Brenda were always out there. And she's sort of an accumulation of a few different gals that I ran into when I was young out there.
Well, and available all the time for sex. I mean, sex was not a big deal in some senses. It was just kind of part of the culture, part of what was available. That's how certainly reading about Brenda comes across in the book.
Yeah, and her sluttiness was encouraged. The society at the time was encouraging women like her to kind of flaunt it, go braless and pantyless, and
right, and to be available.
Right,
constantly.
Now, looking back, I don't know how organic that whole culture was anymore. Looking back, but at the time, it sure changed things.
Right, and
sexual revolution.
So when you turned 13, there's part of here on page 124 of the book. You start turning 13, and so you're having much more of an encounter here with Brenda, and you're realizing that the conversation is Brenda's asking whether you've had any sex, and you say, Raj says, you mean actual sex? And well, we need to remedy that, is what basically Louis is teasing. And Louis is the boyfriend of Brenda. And he says, I give you my permission to have all the sex you want here with young Raj. He's telling Brenda. And so she punches him harder and says, "Stop, Louis." And he said, "I'm just teasing. I didn't get my first sex until I was 15, but maybe Raj needs some sex at 13." So, that's kind of again, hard to imagine in some senses that, she's asking her boyfriend if he could have sex with this 13-year-old underage, and he seems to be encouraging it.
Yeah, it was very common for me, young men like me. I wasn't the only young man at the ranch, but it was very common for us to get teased all the time. Even at like 10, 11, 12, did you get pussy? Yeah. Very, very common to get teased about our virginity. So it was, I mean, it wasn't, I wouldn't call it abusive, but it certainly wasn't healthy.
It's kind of ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's all part of the culture. I mean, and the sexualization of young children, 10, 13, was not uncommon.
No, I don't think it was I don't think it was nefariously intentional either. I don't think that these gals are sitting around going, "Hey man, we got to go fuck Cregg." I think it was just part of the culture at the time.
Yeah, I mean, and the way you describe it in the book is playful, but again is very suggestive. I mean, that this whole idea of the Lolita characteristic, seducing a young person, and and Brenda's really begins to come on to Raj and increasingly encouraging him. So it becomes almost inevitable that Brenda and Raj are going to have sex. It almost, through all the teasing, sexual conversation and banter they have back and forth, it becomes like almost assumed it's going to happen.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Reading,
it got to the point where it gets to the point where it has to happen.
It has to happen.
Otherwise, you're just going to get teased relentlessly. You're going to.
Yeah. What was wrong with you that you didn't want to try it? It was made available to you. You didn't want to try it.
Go get some.
Yeah. And so then when it finally happens, she starts kissing you and then seduces you. When you write about that, what's going on with the characters? What's Raj experiencing as he gets seduced for the first time for sex?
Well, Raj is happy for on one side, but very confused on the other side. It's like, what this is kind of weird. What are we doing? It's kind of, and when I look back way back, and it's kind of overwhelming for a kid like that. It shouldn't have happened, because I think back, the ranch was a perfect set. I could be running a nice ranch right now if it hadn't been for all these weirdos that were out there. And by weirdos, I mean my family.
Your family, the ones you grew up with.
Right, the ones who created the ranch. Well, it's my grandfather's ranch, and it's just like any other thing. I don't know if you've heard the Righteous Gemstones series, where the father is a preacher and he makes a lot of money and his kids ruin everything. It's kind of the same thing. My grandfather built the ranch. It was successful, and his kids ruined it.
Yeah, I mean, it gets to be explicit sex, and you talk about what goes on and how she basically lays back and pulls up her skirt and seduces him.
Yeah, as a reader, if you can't get through that, you should just put the book down, because
if you can't get past about page 154, it probably this is not for you. Yeah. But I'd suspect that most people who get to page 154, are really now wanting to learn more of how all this goes on and what happens. But as shocking as this whole sexual episode of introducing Raj to sex with Brenda is, and how explicit it is, I want to switch to what happens with Sloan. So talk about this character Parsons, who's the Hollywood photographer. He certainly comes from Malibu. Of course, he comes on much more of a slick operator.
Yeah. So the real Sloan in my life it was a real problem because she was a drop dead gorgeous little girl. And being with her was really problematic because there was so many guys, especially during those times. So many men were photographers, and so many men wanted to make her a model. So she was constantly getting hit on by these creeps, and it comes to a point where eventually she gives in because she's interested in it, and it doesn't work out at all. I mean, she doesn't get what she was promised. She just got used, is all. And that
Right.
was that was happening all the time.
And again, the idea of, of course, taking naked pictures, and the whole thing was, from the photographer's point of view, was really sexualized. From Sloane's point of view, she's young and is not fully aware of what's going on. It's kind of fun and titillating, but she's not conceptualizing it the way he is.
Plus, she's realizing for the first time her sexual power. Because even though this guy's ultimate goal is just to have sex with her, she's in there too. She thinks she's manipulating him at the same time. So if you contrast to the Brenda Raj, it's two different scenarios completely. I mean, it's both about sex with underage kids, but on one hand, it sort of happens innocently, I guess. I don't think Brenda was really out to screw young boys. But with Parson, that's what he does. That's his game. Get as many as you can.
Yeah, and the talk as he's grooming her,
Mm-hmm.
which is preparing her for sex. I mean, on page 141, you've got a conversation, and this Parsons is kind of saying, and Sloane is beginning to realize what he's talking about. He said, "You mean you would really want me to sit behind the mirror and watch me getting dressed?" And he says, "Most definitely." He says, "What? That's sick. What about in the bathroom? Would you watch me take a shower?" He says, "Especially in the shower. Full-length one-way mirrors right next to the shower." So, "Oh my God, that's so nasty," Sloane reacts. "You seriously want to watch me taking a shower?" He said, "I watched you swimming just now. What's the difference?" "Well, for one thing, I'm naked when I take a shower." So you're practically naked now. So the conversation is really working her into normalizing the sexual nature of the relationship is just expected or just normal. It's what
Right, and it's extremely manipulative. But you look today. This happens all the time now. I mean,
be more detailed about that. And how do you mean? What are you thinking in terms of how it happens all the time now?
well, back then, I remember, I had 3 sisters too that were attractive and alluring, and everybody was always getting hit on. We were all, as young kids, we were getting hit on, and it was kind of strange, but it wasn't happening to our friends. Our friends weren't getting hit on. Maybe some of them were, but we didn't really talk about it. Whereas today, it seems like all children are put into a position where they're getting hit on as sex objects. And that seems to be common. Children today have to face this. What we were facing back then and was considered, wrong, is what kids go through all the time now, and we didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, back then you had the Brady Bunches being the
Right.
typical family, and even before then it was Leave It to Beaver. I mean, these were very innocent children, whereas today, with the wacky left, they're wanting to have transgender story hour taught by a transgender, and children's books on sex from like kindergarten to first grade on, and books on sex in the school libraries today, which are ample, would in prior eras would not have been permitted, but today are common and taught, and the teachers are. I mean, there's more discussion of sex going on in the classrooms today than I think ever before.
I remember my sisters getting really mad because they came out with a dress code at the high school where girls could no longer show. They were starting to show their midriffs, their belly buttons, and the school clamped down and said, "Nope, you can't do that anymore." I mean, compare that to today. I mean, they came home because we had dress codes. They came home upset because, so that's what makes me wonder, how organic was this sexual revolution? Because look where it's got everybody today. It almost seems like it was contrived and done on purpose.
Well, it was. I mean, this is the same period of time when writers like Herbert Marcuse, who was a communist in the Frankfurt School, was writing books called Eros and Civilization, which is read in the universities, saying that liberation comes from unbridled sex. That until we have an unlimited libido explored and performed in real life, we're not reaching our full potential.
Right. Plus the Luciferians, their whole thing is sex oriented. Aleister Crowley everything was sex. That's how you get the magic. This NS-31, these 6 gals, that sex ritual they just did in space. Everything's always about sex with them. So that's why I look back as an old man now, and when I say I don't think it was, what we're really saying is I know it wasn't organic. I know that the sexual revolution was created. Was created to bring us to this point today.
Yeah, I mean, I go on to all of this. So Parsons leads Sloane to the master bedroom, and the king size bed is covered in a lot of white billowy sheets and comforters. There's a camera set up on a tripod in the foot of the bed, and he says the bed and sheets represent the beach. So I thought, we just have you pose on the sheets like you're lying on your beach towel. So do you want me to lie in the bed? He said, yeah, I've photographed other girls this way before. It's a classy way to show how sexy you can get without being slutty. Give it a try. So he's getting her to get in a position and then gets her to loosen up. And he said, the camera's so in love with you and so am I. And he says, they suggest that she go topless. Okay, so it's a grooming step by step. If you accepted this, well, then why can't you accept this? Right. As one step more into the sexual experience of a Sloane having a sexual affair with a much older man, and she, page 145, you say she loves it. On her 4th relationship, they're developed into a master-slave game where Sloane suggests that Parson put on one of the pirate outfits and then ravage her. Tells him she has a fantasy of being captured by cowboys on horses who use her for their own pleasures. But a pirate's close enough. So, I mean, it gets into the sexualization of children is part of the satanic process.
Right, and if you look at that process that little girl just went through, not every little girl, when they get into that situation, is going to go through with it. A lot of them are going to get scared. A lot of them aren't even going to get invited. The same thing was happening to us engineers in Silicon Valley back then. It's little by little, they're kind of grooming you into this situation, into this club, and they test you along the way. How far will you go? How far are you willing to go? And they reward you too. If you take your shirt off, and or if you go to the ritual and participate, and you get a reward, you get attention, you get maybe a promotion, a position, you get invited to the next party. And so they're pretty good at doing what they do, at grooming people, human beings, into doing things that we know we shouldn't do and probably don't want to do, but the rewards are worth it.
Well, again, you make the point constantly that you can experience Silicon Valley or something like that and do all right,
right.
Make a living, have a reasonable life, raise children, have a marriage that's actually a marriage, and is not open to sex with others. But you're not going to advance to the higher levels in Silicon Valley unless you abandon that model.
Right.
And
you wouldn't even know it either. You would just think, well, I just wasn't good enough. I wasn't lucky enough. Like, no, you weren't crazy enough. That's the only difference. I mean, some of these uber rich people are extremely crazy, and that's how they got there. They had the right personality. They had that crazy, that type of personality, I guess.
They were willing and anxious to do this type of these things and to cross these lines.
Yeah, see, if somebody had told me in the beginning where I was heading, I would have never left the ranch. But I didn't know what I was getting I did not know what I was getting into. I knew what I was doing, and pretty soon you get so far that you think, oh, I can't turn back now. and that's sort of, they do that on purpose as well. They get you to the point where, well, how much are you willing to give up? Fine, you want out, fine, you can give up everything. You're never going to get back here. You're never going to play again. You're never going to get another contract. And you're so far into it now that it's like, how am I ever going to get back to a simple life? But you can. I mean, look at me. I live off grid now.
Yeah, but you also realize, in writing the book, it's clear you realize that, what you were going through at the ranch when you started out innocent and then are seduced by an older woman and brought into this grooming you went through, prepared you to, when Sloane comes around, she's not shocking any longer, it's titillating. And then the sex orgy parties and drugs are just an enhancement of what you already agreed to do. So it's a progression.
Pretty much, yeah.
And
what's really interesting, the other thing that's interesting is with my story is the bikers taking over the ranch. I look back now, it's like, how did that ever happen? I'm glad it did, though, because it kind of gave me a sense or a view of the world where you can be crazy, but you don't have to be evil. So like these bikers, everybody thinks they're evil and crazy. And a lot of them are, but most of them aren't. Most of them are family guys. It's just something that they do. They like the security of being an outlaw biker. It's a club to them. It's security. It's safety. It's community, and it's a hobby.
Right. It's a weekend thing to do, and
that's a lifestyle for them. But their bikes are hobbies.
So okay, but again, we'll cover that. That's another complex part of the book.
Okay.
But this whole grooming, and because Brenda continues throughout the book. I mean, she continues out through a good long part of the book.
She's in the second book too.
And in the second book too. I mean, it's like the sex with her gets more and more deep and addictive. And she begins teaching Raj much more, coaching him. And the sexual reality that they begin living in, is abnormal, because it's an obsession with sex. Everything becomes experienced through sex. Whereas in a normal, child rearing, kids aren't interested in sex until puberty. And here it's way before puberty. And they're beginning to get into what it's about before they really understand what it's about. But by the time they do understand what it's about, then they're more deeply into it, because they've already been acculturated the behaviors and learned the behaviors. Now they cross over into a deeper enjoyment of them. And it begins to dominate their entire experience. It becomes what they're thinking about all the time.
Plus, it kind of breaks down the whole taboo structure when you're that young, and you see how easy it is for the adults to break down these taboos that you've been hearing about. Then it makes it easier to break the next one and the next one. And you're still a kid. You're still a young person, and you're already, doing things you're not supposed to do.
And somehow intuitively, it's wrong.
Yeah, you do. Well, yeah.
It's not right. It just doesn't. It isn't. But yet it's alluring, and you've crossed the line, and you've decided to go into that.
That's half the fun,
right? And so, the seduction part of Silicon Valley, and then coupling it with financial success, worldly goods, accomplishment. We now get people to be billionaires on stock, which is, again, creating wealth out of nothing. It's almost magical.
Mm-hmm.
It's conferred on you, and it's conferred on you because you've agreed to immerse into this lifestyle. And so when asked to perform rituals, killing babies, eating babies, going after sex orgies in which someone is killed to heighten the sexual pleasure of the others watching, things that are just completely evil. And we're showing here a number of the pictures, the illustrations in the book, so you can really see how the satanic world emerges from a innocent reality. And before you know it, you're in the middle of the satanic ritual that you've step by step bought into, and it's become your reality. It's become now normal. And that's I think the shocking part of this is the progression of evil and how it becomes captivating once you're in it, such that escaping from it almost requires superhuman effort.
Well, it happens to a lot of people in Hollywood and in Silicon Valley, where you're just overwhelmed with, I remember I was sitting there one day and I had a $12 million portfolio, and I wanted to get out, and I kept looking, at my documents over here, and it was just really difficult to. And I realized looking back, it was just money on paper. They do that to you on purpose. You think you're a millionaire, you're really not. There's nothing I could do with that. I suppose I could cash it out or something, but. And then I had this nice flat in San Francisco, and I had a car, and I had 2 Harley Davidsons and a sailboat, and it's really hard to give up. Really hard to give up. I mean, a lot of people say, "Well, you're just materialistic." It's like, yeah, but it's more than that, because I had power and prestige and position. I had friends I didn't even know their names. I had people, flocking around me. I didn't even know who they were.
Well, Silicon Satan is a book that I think is important to have been written and read, and it is not written for the purpose of titillation. It's not pornography, because it's the moral part of the writing is you just have to, unfortunately, really explain what it's about in detail. Otherwise it wouldn't be understood. If you didn't go through the explicit description of what's going on, you wouldn't understand the experience.
Yeah, I'm hoping it fast tracks a number of people into wokeness, or not wokeness, but into waking up, into not even just really waking up. I see a lot of people there. They know this goes on, but they're not really looking at it. You need to look at it. You need to look at it. You need to see what's really going on around you, because once you do, then you're no longer, you don't have that bubble around you anymore, and then you can start seeing it other places, and then maybe we can start doing something about it, because I really don't see a whole lot being done yet.
Well, the awareness is yet happening. I mean, for instance, I think most people don't understand the pervasiveness of, of pedophilia, sex with underage children, and how it is part of in fact, central to this culture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And central to the culture in a way that, for a child, first of all, they're separated from their parents, so that they're immediately taken away from all the love they had in their lives. They're abandoned, treated very roughly by their handlers, forced to have sex with older, aged people of the same or other sex. They don't understand. And it's often drunken and brutal. The kids are in despair. They want to go back and have a childhood. They've lost their childhood. To do that to a child is almost an unimaginable crime.
Yeah, and I see them grooming society into accepting all this. It's all over the place. The Brenda version of that is being pushed out as though it's kind of healthy and it's natural and there's nothing wrong with it. But the Brenda version is not really what happens. Not even the Parson version mostly is what happens. But the version that comes on later in the book is what really happens. What you were just talking about.
Yeah, well, we'll get there. And again, this is going to be a series of interviews. They're going to be, we're going to have these interviews. I want these interviews also archived on the website so people can watch them and see a series of interviews that we do, because over a period of time, we'll have covered much of the book and talked about much of the book.
I mean, once they make pedophilia no longer illegal, then we're all screwed. Well, no pun intended. Then we're. I mean, and I see that happening now, that they're grooming everybody to accepting this, and pretty soon pedophilia will be acceptable. I think it's acceptable in some certain countries now, right? Greece.
Well, it is, but again, I think the reaction to it, in some ways, I think it was almost a gift to God that we had Biden steal the election in 2020, so we got to see how horrible these people were.
Hmm.
And you have 500,000 children coming across the border that disappear, and either child slave labor or child sex trade. And
I know people. I know people don't want to believe it, but that's the adrenochrome industry. Most of those children end up in the adrenochrome industry.
We'll talk about adrenochrome.
Well, I remember they didn't call it adrenochrome back then. They called it chroming. And I think I got chromed once because somebody put 3 drops of something just straight out of the Hunter Thompson on my tongue, and I was having fun for 3 days. It was like having the best cocaine, the best everything all at once. It was the last time I ever took it.
Where does it come from?
Well, I don't know where they got that. I was in. Oh, you mean how did they manufacture it? They manufacture it through scaring little children into. I mean, you can look all that up. It's
scaring little children into producing these hormonal reactions.
Right. So like the whole frazzle drip thing. I don't know if you're familiar with that, with Hillary and Huma and the frazzle drip rumor, but where they actually cut the face off one of the children and was wearing it to freak them out, and that Morty cartoon, they did a kind of a cartoon about it. But that's what goes on. That's what they do. They abuse these children, torture them, and they need children because it works better with children. And they harvest this adrenochrome out of their blood, and they use it as a drug. And
that's what goes on. That's what it's about.
And until people accept that, and there's so much evidence of it out there, until people actually accept it, that it's going on, and nobody's going to do anything about it. The hardest part is getting people to get, wrap your head around this. This is happening. You can't explain where these 500,000 children are going. You can't explain why Cher looks like she's 27 years old still. You can't explain why the people who drop off suddenly get really old because they don't get it anymore. And not only that, but it kind of makes sense. We write this kind of stuff in our, these magical potions in our fairy tales all the time. What makes you think it's not really happening? I mean, it is, but it is.
Well, it's the awareness of these practices, and again, if we get more of the P. Diddy and more of the Epstein and all these stories coming out and being told, and right now I think even the Justice Department suppressing it. They're still not letting it come out, even though we're supposed to have Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and tell all, and let these, we still have classified documents suppressing reality and truth about the CIA. Kennedy assassination, a lot of documents were destroyed that'll never be found now because they were destroyed. Others are still being withheld because they were never turned over by the CIA, and others, they were kept hidden despite the law demanding they be turned over to the Assassinations Records Review Board in the 1990s. They weren't turned over. Okay, so the lies and this age is coming to an end with Trump coming in and the shocking revelations we're finding. But you're going to see a lot more, like you say, you get asked by people saying, well, okay, this person suicided. Did they really suicide? And you begin to explain red scarfing. What is red scarfing?
Red scarfing is the way they used to get rid of people and send a message at the same time. I don't see it so much anymore because I think they got too much exposure. But it's where the guy will go in and strangle you and then make it look like you hung yourself on a doorknob with a red scarf. I mean, nobody can hang themselves on a doorknob. You would naturally get up, right? And then they try to use the sexual asphyxiation as like for David Carradine, but again, the setup is all wrong. So if people would start realizing that this kind of stuff is going on, it'd be easier for them to realize that, okay, so the JFK files probably are true, and all those conspiracies probably are true. It only takes one thing to kind of break down their dam or their wall of security.
Well, once this is penetrated, once the evil is seen, I believe
you can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it, and I think that people are going to repudiate it because you don't want your children brought into this. You don't want it happening to the ones you've created and love.
And that's sort of the dilemma, because you can't. It's hard to see something you don't want to see. It's so awful, you really don't want to look at it, but you need to. It's one of those kind of things.
Yeah, and it's affected your life, who you are today, and have suffered and have to struggle with these demons. But I commend you in that you're writing about it and exposing it to the world to see in its raw form. And as such, it's going to be harder for it to remain hidden. And my goal is to get it seen clearly so that we're no longer fooled by a display of 500,000 children who suddenly are brought across the border and disappear. Yeah. They're sex trafficked, or they're.
I think me and people like me need to just be louder. I've hidden for so long because it just seemed like the natural thing to do. Hide. It's hiding from them, but it's hiding from me too. I just didn't want to look back. It's too hard to look back, but once you do, then there's a certain freedom, and then you want to go out and tell everybody, but nobody wants to hear it because it's not, it's ugly.
Well, I think the audience is going to build, and we're going to continue to do these shows, and we're going to continue to go through the writing. And as we wrap up here, I want to go back to showing people the Silicon Satan cover of the book. It's available on Amazon, and we devoted a section of CorsiNation.com. Go down further in the page, you'll see the Silicon Valley section where Cregg is writing a new novel that's being serialized. You've got illustrations now that Cregg is doing the various scenes, and soon there'll be animations. And we'll also put these interviews and other interviews on with Cregg so that they're all there available to be viewed. And I want to thank you, Cregg, for coming on again, and commend you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll do much more of this. And just wrapping it up, I want to affirm that in the end, God always wins, and God will dispel this darkness too.
Amen.
Amen. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi with CorsiNation.com. We've been here with Cregg Lund, who is the author of Silicon Satan, a novel. And I encourage everybody to get it and to read it, and talk about it, and pass it on to others. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and Corsi Nation podcast every weekday. We will be back next weekday, and thank you for joining us. God bless.